Welcome again, and this time, congratulations, because if you are here, it's because you have been able to successfully complete the 3 steps of our collaboration barriers game. Now, what we want to do together is to try to debrief a little bit the experience of the first 2 steps and basically draw some conclusions about collaboration barriers. First of all, the first step was about increasing our awareness of collaboration barriers, where they are, and what could be the negative impact they have in certain situations. If you have reached the last screen of the game, you have been able to access the full model that, if you want, you can print out, and in the center of it you find the 4 big categories of collaboration barriers. First of all, the not invented here. This is a typical attitude from individuals which makes them into bad receivers. If you bring them information or data or knowledge, they tend not to value it. They tend only to value information which is produced inside their own units. On the other side, what makes collaboration difficult is not only if you have bad receivers, but also if you have bad sources. And here we have the second big category, hoarding, the tendency when you have information or know-how to keep it for yourself rather than spreading it. And then we have also seen that there are some collaboration barriers categories which are more related to the organization. How easy is it, for instance, to search for expertise in the company, for know-how, for information? How able are people to transfer even complex information across the unit of an organization? And as you have seen in the last screen, you were able to click on any of the collaboration barriers identified to have an explanation of the implications they had in the case of FBI. I hope you have been able to do it, because then you can see how each one of these collaboration barriers actually relate to a problem that was exposed for FBI, which needs to be addressed in order to enable the organization to face such complex threats as the one of 9/11. If you have not done it extensively, feel free to go back to the previous step, reopen the software, and review the different additional insights. For instance, if we look at one of the collaboration barriers, the fear one, in the FBI case, you will see that, for instance, there is an interesting explanation telling that the insular culture and the self-reliance attitude, which are 2 others collaboration barriers, prevent to ask for help outside the group in order not to reveal lack of knowledge or competences. So you see, people are afraid of revealing that they do not know, and these would create a big issue, so they don't dare to ask for help. That's a barrier. Second, the officer's reputation would have been at stake, because field officers' independence would have been at risk if decision-making processes had to rely from external input. So if we want to have a high level of autonomy, of independence, we start valuing only information which comes from inside, and be very careful in giving information to others or relying on others people's information. And this was the case at FBI. And this is even more true in inter-agencies relationship, because governmental funds might depend on the performance. So here you see again the issue of incentives. People might be willing to work collaboratively, but the organization might not provide them the right incentive. And we have seen misaligned incentives is another of the collaboration barriers we have identified. And then in addition comes that the fear of losing power. In a highly competitive environment, as FBI is, the reputation of officers is measured by their performances. Therefore, the most assets they can use to consolidate their position in their group and in the organization, the more likely they succeed. Okay? Sharing knowledge clearly is against their interest. So we go back to the fact that here we have a case where they are clearly aware that it would add value, but it goes against their interest. So here we have to work on the incentive dimension. Great. Now, the game we played in the last phase and this overall picture of the most important collaboration barriers was the first step, the one of becoming aware. Now, the next one is clearly the one of asking ourselves, how can we now address them in order to make our organization able to collaborate more effectively? And for this, we propose to you a relatively actionable tool that you can use for yourself or even within your teams to generate a reflection, a structured, systematic reflection on how to address collaboration barriers. Okay, and this tool, if you want, starts with a review of collaboration projects you might have had in the past. Okay, we have seen one of the reasons why people resist are previous experiences which didn't work particularly well. In every organization, when we try, for instance, to collaborate more, we might have a successful case, and unfortunately there are not a lot, or we might have a successful case which doesn't last very long because it's not sustainable. Initially people might say, yes, let's work together, but then it might not last very long. Or you have cases where organizations start sending these signals, let's work together across silos, but basically nothing happens because people are not willing to move. And there are also cases where we succeed in increasing a little bit collaboration, but actually it is not the type of continuous improvement that we would like to have, like in this case. So you see, based on our experience, the projects aiming at introducing more collaboration within organizations often fail. We see success more or less in 25% of the cases. But in most of the cases, we have failure pattern. That means the organization doesn't succeed in changing its culture and the attitude of the people. But this also means that before embarking into big new projects, it is very wise to review the experiences that we have had in previous type of projects, to try to distill what we can learn from these experiences, what is it that we don't want to repeat if the experience was negative, and what we have to put in place as conditions in order to make such a project successful. So the first step is to engage yourself and perhaps your collaborator into a reflection about the question, have we tried in the past to increase collaboration? What were our experiences when we had to collaborate with some external agencies? So to try to review how until now collaboration has developed within the organization, to identify some specificities. The second step then goes into identifying the opportunities. And here we have discussed it in the first part, organizations today try to rediscover collaboration to increase their operational excellence, because the quality of the decisions can be higher if more people are involved, and because cost can be reduced through the effective flow of knowledge in the organization. But another big objective that many organizations have is to increase the value they generate for their customer. Now, obviously, we talk about customer in a generic sense, okay? These are those who profit from the services provided by the organization. In the case of law enforcement agency, this would be the public. In the case of a government organization, this would be the services provided to the citizens. Okay, and the third big domain in which we see many companies moving is the domain of innovation. Every organization needs to remain up to speed with the state of the art of technologies, of methodologies, and always find innovative ways of increasing the value generated. And also, in order to have an increased innovation, collaboration has revealed to be a very important factor because it helps us to aggregate the diverse views that you can have in your organizations. Now, in order to do this systematically for yourself or with your team, we have prepared a set of 6 questions which will help you identifying if your key opportunities are more in the domain of improving your operational excellence, improving the value you are generating, for instance, for the decision makers which will use the information you produce or the analysis you produce, and or if collaboration might boost more innovative approaches and the adoption of new ways of working in your organization. So the next step actually is the most critical, and it is the one where we'd like to help you identify your own barriers. We have seen there are many generic barriers. Now the point is which one apply to you. Also here we have prepared 2 set of questions, a total of 12 questions, which will help you yourself and your team to identify which are, for instance, the collaboration barriers which are more frequent in your organization and which are those who are not really representing a problem within your organization. So, for instance, you can see here some of the questions. If we take one, for instance, when faced with problems, employees in our unit strive to solve them by themselves without asking for help from outsiders. You see, this is a question which can help us assessing the collaboration barriers that we have called norm of self-reliance. The fact that many of the professionals we are working with have a natural tendency not to look outside for help for different reasons and to rely on their own resources. Is this the case in our organization or not? Or if we take another question, our employees have not learned to work together effectively across organizational units to transfer tacit knowledge. Again, this would be an example of these collaboration barriers, namely the barrier of having to transfer complex knowledge, knowledge which cannot be just simply put into a document, but requires conversations, requires working together. And our employees, this is the question, do they have or not the familiarity with working together with people who are very different because they come from other units or not? So you see how this question can help us, can help you actually identifying which are the collaboration barriers which are more relevant. You can go through this question trying to have everybody rank how important is it for us, and then see the picture which emerges at the end. And the last phase in this systematic process is the one of identifying management levers. What can we do? And here, at least the literature tells us that there are 3 areas: unifying, aligning people. You see here, for instance, an example. In our organization, we have an organizational goal that does a very good job in unifying people. So here the test is simply, if you ask 10 people in your organization, what is our compelling organizational goal which unify us? Are you going to have one answer, or are you going to have many different answers? Because this will show if within the organization there is alignment around a common goal. And it's only if we have this alignment that we can assume that people will be motivated to work together. If there are too many hidden agendas, too many local objectives which are more important than the global alignment, then we might have an issue there. The second domain in which to operate is the one of people, their competences, and the culture of the organization. For instance, again, do our top leaders in the organization regularly send strong signals and talk about the importance of collaboration, or this is a subject that they do not mention? And are they then consistent? For instance, when it comes to careers, are people selected and rewarded based on their capability to collaborate, or even to collaborate across units, or to collaborate with external organizations, as often we need to do to address big challenges? So the third domain is the one of supporting people to develop relationships and networks, because it is through these networks of trust that then knowledge flows and people learn to work well together. Also, to support this analysis, we have prepared for you 14 specific questions which will help you identify where you could start to act in order to address the collaboration barriers that you will have identified in your organization. Great. So we come here to the conclusion of this step. You remember our objective for this learning module was to stress the importance of effective collaboration. I hope we have seen that if we are facing very complex cross-organizational context, the capability to collaborate is critical to achieve high performance. The second objective was to try to focus on resistance, understand that if collaboration does not take place, is because there are a number of resistance sources that we have to learn to identify. And the third point was to focus on organizational barriers and how to address them. And here I hope that during this module you got a number of ideas on how to systematically address this issue on your own or collaboratively with your collaborators. And you can surely download the diagnostic tools with all the questions and run through these on your own or in a group to identify some of the actions which might be applicable to your organization. So once again, I really hope that this module generated a number of good insights for you, also awareness of your organization, and also some good ideas to initiate actions to introduce change. Obviously, I advise you first to go through the diagnostics tool in order to gain a good understanding of the situation and of the opportunities to act. And then again, as usual, my advice will be for you to allocate some time to reflect when it comes to collaboration. What is it that we should keep because we know how to do sufficiently well, but also which are some of the behaviors, for instance hoarding behaviors, that we do not want to have anymore in our organization, that even if they were justified until yesterday, if we want to be able to address the collaboration barriers and perform also in complex global projects, then we need to stop certain behaviors and certain attitudes. And on the other side, I hope that the module also generated a number of ideas on innovations to be injected within the organization to be able to address again difficult collaboration context. Again, I hope that this module was useful for you, and I want to thank you in advance to spend the next 3 minutes to provide us feedback, which is critical for us in order to continuously improve this learning experience. Feel free to print out some of the material related to this module, for instance, the diagnostics tool, or a nice one-page picture of the model, including all the collaboration barriers. Best wishes!